Good morning. My name is Ravi Anupindi. I'm a faculty at the Ross School of Business in Technology and Operations area. It's a great pleasure to welcome Alan Murray, who is the CEO of NextFoods. Alan also is the vice chairman of a company called Sanopta, which is a natural and organic food ingredients company. Prior to that, he was CEO of Tetra Pak, North America and Canada, and he had been with Tetra Pak in the leadership role, not only in North America, before that, in Netherlands as well as South Africa. So my interaction with Alan was through an initiative when he was leading Tetra Pak on recycling of cartons. So that's the context. I wrote up a case study, and Alan has graciously agreed to come and discuss the case with our students here. The reason I brought this product is this is not only a good belly product, but it is in a carton. And the popular perception is that this packaging is not recyclable. Under Alan's leadership, the entire industry came together to form the Carton Council and did some interesting stuff about how to make cartons, improve access to recycling for cartons. So perhaps what we will do, Alan, is maybe start off with that initiative and talk about what it meant, why you actually took it upon yourself to improve access to carton recycling of cartons. What was the original motivation for that? And from there we will go and we'll come to and talk about your current initiative, which is on Good Belly, right, Alan?
Well, to address the first question, I guess the answer is twofold. On the one hand, it's legacy. What do you want to be leaving behind? And on the other hand, it's a pure business motivation as well, because I did an exercise together with the management on what were the most likely constraints to our growth over a 20-year period. So we took a really long horizon. And one of the top three we figured was going to be the ability to pull whatever was sold into the environment, pull it back out of the environment and recycle it. And I had the fortune of seeing this picture play out in Europe and some other parts of the world that I've worked in. So I was able to sort of sketch that as a bigger issue. And then that's why we decided to tackle it.
Given your broad experience, you mentioned you tackled similar issues in Europe. How do you see this issue playing out differently in Europe versus maybe Southern Hemisphere, like you worked in South Africa and the United States? What are some distinctions, and what bearing does that have on how you structure your organization, get buy-in from internal buy-in from your own organization, but as well as what you did with the Carton Council is working with your competitors?
If we go back to the 80s, early 90s in Europe, there was a lot of legislation being put together to drive environmental issues and better behavior. And having been on the receiving end of that, I noticed that when I was in Holland, for instance, it would take up something like 60-70% of the CEO's time was dedicated to dealing with these types of issues. And that's perhaps because we never actually got out in front of those issues. So the idea here was, why don't we anticipate that might be the situation here in the US, get out in front of it, proactively put programs in place so that you're not responding to legislation, which is normally punitive and less efficient than doing something yourself. When it comes to developing countries such as China, Brazil, South Africa, we had a very proactive approach to growing the business in those parts of the world, and it was always linked to setting up recycling systems at the same time.
Now, what you had to do here in North America, given that there was no legislation, and you managed to get your competitors on board to work on this initiative. Could you talk a little bit about how difficult, easy it was to convince other leaders to see your way or your vision about what this should be?
It's always awkward talking to competitors, especially because I didn't know them, I didn't have a relationship with them, and there's so many rules about what you can and cannot discuss. So there's always a suspicion when you initiate a discussion like that. And what I tried to do was kind of a twofold approach. One was sketch the threat to their business, i.e., as a businessman, if you're going to be around in the long term, we have to address this. And on the other hand, appeal to the human side, the what are you going to tell your grandchildren kind of story. So, if we as business leaders are going to tell our grandchildren we made a whole lot of money, but we put a whole lot of junk out into the environment, it doesn't feel so good. Whereas if you can say to your grandchildren, I was the guy behind initiating the collection and recycling of all of those things, and other industries then followed, that's just a better story. So it was, on the one hand, selling fear and damnation, and the other hand, selling hope and legacy.
Now you have other stakeholders in the organization, like shareholders and other people, and if let's say in this case you have to make significant investments to grease the reverse channel for recycling, well, that's an investment that some could argue it's a public good, and why is a company actually making that investment? Mm-hmm. How do you convince the other stakeholders, shareholders, or even maybe at the corporate headquarters level that this is where we should invest?
Okay. The trickiest one, of course, is convincing your competitors that they should spend their money against a project that probably wasn't budgeted for by themselves. So what we did there was I went to each of the CEOs of the competitors individually, sat down, had a dinner with them, explained the motivation behind it. And then when I got them together in a room for the first time, I didn't sketch that I thought we'd need $25 million to get the thing going. I said, in the first year, I think we'll need, and I forget the exact amount, let's call it $5 million. Mm-hmm. And I said that we, as Tetra Pak, would be in for half. And what I'd like to do is for the rest of you to split up the other half on a pro rata basis according to your size. And secondly, if you don't like what we've done, after a year, you can all pull out. This is not a multi-year commitment. I'm in for half, and you can bail after a year. It's just taking away the fear factor and the concerns and kind of guilting them into it a bit. Hey, I'm prepared to pay half. Come on, guys, step up. And without fail, each one put their hand up and said, I'm in.
And they continue to participate.
Yeah, that was the trick was make the entry point as small as possible, and then do a really good job and let them see the benefits. And then at the end of each year say, so who's signing up for next year? I'm in for half again. Mm-hmm. And the hands went up.
What are some future challenges you see in this particular initiative?
Sustaining the momentum, because it's always easier to grab the highly concentrated metropolitan areas because you've got just more intensity and concentration. But as you move out into the rural areas, it becomes more expensive per carton that you're recycling. So we're going to have to figure out how to do that as we roll the system beyond the 50% accessibility to recycling.
Great. Let's switching tracks now. Let's get to your current initiative. So you moved on from Tetra Pak and you became the CEO of NextFoods, which is making this drink called Good Belly, which is a probiotic juice drink. So a few questions there. Your target market stated are the baby boomers. And what are some of the challenges of communicating or advocating the benefits of your product, given that there's so many other probiotic products on the market?
Well, firstly, let me say, I don't think we've been really successful in reaching the baby boomers because most of our promotion is done online and through Facebook, and it's not always the boomers who are hanging out on those sites. So our current consumer base tends to be younger than the boomer base. But fortunately, it's a very vocal consumer base because this probiotic juice, Good Belly, it really works. It has a profound effect on a lot of people's lives and their digestive system. So they become advocates and they talk about it. What I'd like to unlock is how to find more advocates within the boomer community so that they can be the mavens who start talking about the benefits of the product to their friends.
How do you see the whole target market evolve in the next few years for you?
If you see probiotics in the US compared to the rest of the world, we're way behind in the per capita consumption. So it's one of those things that's going to catch on one day. Much like recently Americans have learned that yogurt can actually be quite a nice product. It's nutritious and it tastes good. And up until Chobani and Faye and these guys came onto the market, it was all that sort of mixed up gunk of artificial flavors and coagulants, and it was actually quite a revolting product. The per capita consumption of yogurt in the rest of the world was far higher than the US, but when we finally get onto these trends in the US, it can become a really big thing. Very much the same with probiotics. The per capita consumption, even in Mexico, is way above what it is in the US. So this will come, and we'll ride that wave as it comes.
So I forgot to mention, you are an avid surfer. So you're speaking about riding the wave, right? So you look for these opportunities and ride. So is you see this as the right opportunity to ride the probiotic wave?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, if you're going to be in a startup like this, pick a hot category and be ahead of the curve. Secondly, be the first mover. Thirdly, get some proprietary technology behind it, because the probiotics in Good Belly are surrounded by patents and licenses. Fourthly, be authentic about who you are. Nobody can copy authenticity. And fifthly, slap together a great management team, and you should succeed.
Yeah. Wonderful. I was on your website, and you have this tagline: "Right living from right livelihood."
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about what
it's
that
very
means?
simple. It's everything we do should not harm the planet, should not harm animals, should not harm people who consume it, and should actually be doing good throughout the supply chain. Everybody who touches the product should do better through having been involved with it. And you just apply that principle to every decision. You rule out a lot of possibilities, but you know who you are and you know what you stand for. Yeah.
So how do you do that? I mean, it's easy to say, easy to write on a website.
You got to live by it, though, and you have the principles written up in the office, and the people you hire are hired on the basis of can they adhere to that sort of way of living, and any crucial decision that you take is measured against the principles. And if it is going to harm anybody in the chain, then it's a no-go. It's that simple.
At our school, we have the Center for Positive Organizations, and whose main motto is to inspire and enable leaders to build high-performing organizations that bring the best out in people. Now, it seems like in both the initiatives, the recycling initiative and the probiotic juice, you seem to imbibe some of those principles. So what I would like to hear from you, having been in leadership roles across the geographies, across different types of companies, how do you convince C-level leaders to imbibe this spirit of positive force of business?
Yeah. Well, I think that people are likely to give more if there is a greater purpose behind what you're trying to do in the company. And I don't mean work more extra hours or kill themselves in the process, but if they believe in what you're trying to do, you're just going to get a higher level of engagement. And this is one of the things that we always measured, both at Good Belly and at Tetra Pak, was the engagement of employees in what the company was trying to achieve. Did they understand what they were trying to achieve, and did they understand their role in getting there? And when we compared ourselves to benchmark companies, we were always like way above world class. So we were really good at that, which meant either we were getting the message across or we were hiring the right people. And probably it's both of those. We were hiring people who wanted to be part of this.
So how does this approach of being, I'll use the phrase positive business that you're running, what role does it play in negotiating contracts? Clearly, you're not doing everything yourself. You have suppliers, suppliers, and other people. Mm-hmm. So what role does it play in working with other partners in the supply chain?
Well, firstly, anybody that you are going to work with who are supplying you have to conform to certain standards, and that gets audited all the time. We get audited as well, both in terms of organic compliance, non-GMO, etc., etc. And what you find with some of your trading partners, people you're selling to, you might get a most favored nation status if your values tie in strongly with theirs. For instance, earlier this year, Whole Foods announced that they want to move all products to non-GMO. Now, all Goodbelly products were non-GMO long before Whole Foods even announced that. In other words, what we have been doing is fully aligned with where they want to go. And so you might get some preferential treatment vis-a-vis someone whose ethos is not quite in line with that.
What are some of the biggest challenges you see facing social enterprises, if I may call that, like NextFoods?
You know, the same as any other company. I don't make any distinction between a socially conscious company and any other. You want to grow and you want to win over consumers. I think that the trends are really in favor of those companies that are being socially responsible. For instance, with Sanopta, we noticed that when we do the investor discussions in Europe, every single talk is always, we are always given the question of where do you stand on social responsibility. So you better have that within the mission of the company, and you better report on it. That question doesn't get asked in the US, but not yet. It'll come, and we're on trend. So it's good for business. Yeah.
Well, great, Alan. Thank you so much. I appreciate spending time with us.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot, Ravi.